name is Blake Pilutti. Born July 16th, 1955 in Raleigh, Mississippi. We moved here in 57 to Calhoun Street in the house I'm living in now. They bought it for $9,800, which is $54 a month. And they scrimped for that. You know, there were times it was like pinching those pennies. I think maybe we didn't know we were poor until we grew up and moved away. But grew up there at the house, went through all 12 years of school in Ocean Springs and schools that aren't even there anymore. Went to junior college for a few years, just drank my way through that. And was sitting in the front yard at Thanksgiving and putting an 8-track in my Firebird, and my dad came out and went, "So how's school going?" And, you know, in hindsight, of course, they knew everything. I said, "It's not going well." And he goes, and this was right at the end of the Vietnam War. They didn't want me in the military, so I knew that was just to get another semester out. So I said, "I think I'm going to join the military." And my dad went, "Oh, dang, I hate to hear that, but it's probably a good idea." And I went, "Oh, dang." So my mom really didn't want me in a war. So I go back inside, and she's chopping up food for Thanksgiving, waiting for everybody to get there. And I said, "Mom, Dad and I threw him under the bus quick." I said, "Mom, Dad and I were talking about me going in the military." And she set that knife down. She says, "Oh, God, Blake, I think that would be horrible, but it may be your best bet." And I went, I just got had. So
You did.
I did. Joined the military. Got into electronics and crypto gear in the Navy. Ended up in Australia for shore base for my entire time. Got out, came back to Ocean Springs. Went to the junior college at Jackson County Junior College, it was called then, in Goche. And they had a program set up with Ingalls for their nuclear program, for the subs. So it was a 2-year associates in radiation protection, control technology. Did that, and right at the end, they lost their contract for the nuclear subs. TMI happened, 3 Mile Island happened, and the industry went up, and I went to TVA for 3 years, Chattanooga, and then ended up in outside of New Orleans at the nuclear plant there, and stayed there to retirement. Was in the radiation protection group, retired as the manager for the radiation biological safety group. Did a little stint as a superintendent of training and project management, and went back to train again for contract dollars. And then got divorced, moved back to Ocean Springs. Got 2 boys. One's in Missouri, one's in Hawaii. 3 grandkids, another one on the way. And now I'm back at the old house. Bought it from my 2 sisters. And fixed it back up because it had the 1957 plumbing, the 1957 wiring.
Wow.
And it was just an accident waiting for a place to happen.
Which house is it?
It's 1405 Calhoun. And it was the Lomaxes, the Parkers, us, the Millers, the Howells, and the Switzers. Mm-hmm. And then on that block was the Parlins, the Norrises, the Pooleys, who owned Ben Franklin 5 and Dime, which they were the rich ones, even though they weren't. We thought they were because they owned a toy store.
And they had a big house.
And they had a big house.
How
could you not be rich
I
if
know.
you owned a toy store?
I know.
My dad was born in Italy, Rivignano, Italy. Him and his family came over when everybody came over in the 20s. He was a small kid. They came through on the Conta Rosa, which was just a salvage ship with all the other immigrants. They came through Ellis Island.
Wow.
Went to, because they already had a brother, Fernando, Nando, was in Toronto. So they came through, and that's where Giovanni, my granddad, and Louisa, my grandmother, and all the little Dago kids. So they go to Toronto, and he couldn't find work. So he took Giovanni, took his family down through Detroit to Chicago, and steel mills, coal mines, with nothing but little Italian enclaves. I mean, everywhere they went, they had little Italies, and that's who they stayed with. My grandmother ran boarding houses so they could live for free. They got caught outside of Chicago running liquor for somebody back then. My Uncle Aldo came home and he said the feds were there, just like in Elliott Ness, throwing the bottles out of the basement. And a guy named Mr. Giamatti got my granddad and these two other guys, Blackie and Beppo, out. And the next day, my grandmother loaded up the truck and said, they're heading to Alliance, Ohio. And they stayed in Alliance till my dad was or that area of Ohio. Worked steel mills, coal mines, brick mills. And my dad joined the Army just before Pearl Harbor because it was a good job, good pay, as did my Uncle Aldo.
And that was a good story about how he joined and that kind of thing. So that's a good story.
So I'm going there.
Good.
You just keep highlighting. So he ends up in Camp Shelby, and he went to a USO dance. And my mom was from Smith County, Mississippi, one of 12 brothers and sisters, 6 boys, 6 girls. I don't know how they did that. And she was in a business school in Laurel, Ms. Brown's Federal Business College. And the USO came there and said, look, we got all these troops over at Shelby in Hattiesburg. We're going to have a dance. And they met at the dance. He started dating her. And every chance he'd get, he'd catch a mail truck or a supply truck going over to Laurel. And they were actually sitting in church when they heard about Pearl Harbor. And my dad was supposed to have gotten out just after that, but he didn't. So their whole group ended up in San Francisco, getting ready to board a troop ship. And they came on board, and they took all the Italians and all the Germans and all the Polish guys, any foreigner off to check their papers. Well, my dad was an illegal alien, as was my Uncle Aldo's. And so they arrested him. He was, for 3 months, he was interned on Angel Island, and he was delivering laundry and food to Alcatraz because he says, got to get me a job somehow. So he was on the boat going back and forth. And they came out one day and they went, okay, who wants out? And he said, everybody there said, yeah. Who wants a raise? Everybody there raised their hand. And he ended up in Georgia at paratrooper school. And he said he didn't really know what paratrooper meant till he was standing on that little platform. But he said that so he joined 82nd Airborne, jumped at D-Day, jumped at Nijmegen, was at the Bulge, and got out at the end of the war. By that time, my mom, from God bless her, Central Mississippi, had got a job at the War Department in D.C. They met there before he got shipped out, got married at the Baptist Church in D.C. And then she took a job in Seattle. She worked for Boeing on the planes, Rosie the Riveter. And then she ended up in Ohio with all the Italians. Didn't speak any Italian. She said the first words she knew, she didn't know they were cuss words, but the first words she knew was hanging out with my granddad, because that's all. So she learned those first, and my grandmother finally went, nah. You don't want to say that. So my dad got back. They lived there, for about 5 or 6 years, had my 2 sisters. And then he got a job eventually at Keesler. And he worked there till he retired. In the interim, he took a job in the reserve unit in town at the Ryan Center. Used to be the Armory. So he worked with all those guys, how he met a lot of the local guys, Glenn Ryan and that whole crew. Mm-hmm. And in 1963, when President Kennedy started the Green Beret units, one of his old buddies called him, who ended up being the adjutant general for the state, General Garner, called and said, look, Ducky, that was his first name was Adelke. And when she would say, Adelke, Ducky, all the kids started saying Ducky, all the American kids. So Ducky hung with him forever. But so Ducky, they're starting this reserve group. It's called Green Beret, and it's paratroopers. So my dad was in the Special Forces also, till he retired. Real quick, I'll tell you the one about my dad's name, and you can edit it out. So after they jumped at D-Day, they went back to London, and they rounded up all those guys that were not Americans, because he jumped as an Italian citizen, as did thousands of people who felt that they were American. So they go, and he was with a guy that he came over on the boat with, grew up with, lived in that town with, joined the service with, got military with, paratrooper. His name was Octavio Sansoni, Tab. And they're on the truck going back to London after they became U.S. citizens. And he said they were so proud. He said a lot of them were crying, they were pumped. And Octavio says, Ducky, we're U.S. citizens. And my dad said, yeah. And he goes, and I got a middle name. And my dad goes, yeah, I got a middle name too. And he says, what's your middle name? And he went, Anthony. And he went, Anthony? He says, yeah, that big old guy that said, last name. He said, Pilutti. He said, first name, Madoki. He said, what's your middle name? He said, don't have one. He said, son, you're a U.S. citizen. You pick you a good American name. And what he didn't understand is my dad had lived with nothing but Italians for his 18 years. And he looked at him and went, Antonio. Antonio picking, and the guy went, nah, it's Anthony. So Tavia goes, no, he's from New York. That's how they say it up there. He says, it's really Anthony. And my dad went, oh, I like that one better. So
that's a great story.
So they ended up here, bought the house. He worked at Keesler forever and raised me and my two sisters in town.
Okay, I want to know a little bit more. Are your sisters younger, older? How's the...
So Alita graduated she was born in 46, so she graduated in 64 from Ocean Springs, from Tacony. And that's when they had two schools. Had East Elementary, first through fourth, and then everybody else was at Tacony. And then she got married, moved away, came back for a little while, is in Tennessee now. And then Kathy was right in between us. She graduated, I think was the first year to graduate from the Round High School when they built that, which then was like a million miles out of town. A million miles out of town.
Yeah.
And everybody complained because it was too far out. And so she graduated from there. And then I went to that's it. And then, of course, she stayed here. She worked at Keesler Federal forever.
Yeah.
Passed away 3 years ago.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. What was it like living in your household? What did you and your siblings do in your spare time? What did y'all like to do?
Well, it was not stay in the house. We didn't have AC, I think, until just before Camille in 69. So the windows were up. It was nothing for us to lay there. I was telling my brother-in-law was in town, and it was nice out. I'd opened up all the windows, and you could hear the train coming through. And I'd written a little story about a while back, and he had read it. He goes, it's like your train story. He says, it's so nice to listen late at night, that train going through, because it brings back, for all of us that grew up during that time, that memory. But we were out of the house.
Yeah, so y'all were, what were you doing, riding bicycles?
Geez. We just left. When we left, it was always we just went. Front beach, we were always at the beach. When I was, 6 or 7, we were just gone. But it was safe. At least we thought it was safe. Our parents thought it was safe, but that's what all the kids did. Springtime hit, we rarely had shoes on. Hit the bikes, hit the beach, hit the harbor. You could go down to the harbor. And of course, we knew all the people that shrimp. Back in that time period, early 60s and on, for a while, it was a working shrimping town more than anything. I mean, we had overflow from Keesler and Ingalls, but a lot of the people, especially where I lived, the Bogers, the Ketchots, the Mitchells, the Ryans, the Benazoos, they made their living out of the harbor. And it was so we would go down there. It was, our friends were either working on the boats or down there at the harbor playing. So we just get a fishing pole, go down the harbor, and if it was shrimp season or anything else, they were out there, they'd just give us live shrimp. We'd go, you could catch fish there all the time. The community pier at the end of Martin, learned to swim there. That's where we all were. If you didn't know how to swim, you were out of luck because everybody swam, and that's where we spent our time. Sweat like crazy and didn't bother us. We would, if we could find a bottle, sell them, go to Ben Franklin's, get penny candy, which was just like the bomb. We'd jump off, the harbor bridge. By then they used to not have the bridge there. They had the lower road. But then they built the bridge and we would jump off that bridge all the time.
How old were you?
Oh, 7, 8. It was not, it was just, I'm sure my mom didn't know.
Was there alligators or anything?
Possibly.
Not that you saw.
Now, and the thing is that the sewerage overflowed in there all the time. So it was.
So your mama knew.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But
so you just had tons of friends, and y'all just would get out and go and go home when it was time to.
When the lights came on.
Yeah.
And then up until probably we were 10, 11, that we had lots of girls in that neighborhood. They were out there playing kickball and football with us. We didn't segregate. It was just wide open. Then, of course, it came that time of, ooh, they're a little different. But
who are some of the girls?
The Millers, which are the Ryan family, Lynn Parker, the Finks. The Finks lived that big open lot there on just across the street toward the park from me. The Finks used to live there. That used to be the Pabst house, which from all the pecans. When we moved in, I remember talking to Brad Lemon one time, and I'd come back, and he was sitting out front talking to my dad on the porch, and I was complaining about how things were growing. Now this was a ways back, and he lived in the Norris house in Pershing when they were kids, and all that was a pecan orchard. They cut down a lot of pecan trees just to build those houses that we lived in. And you could see it we had 5 pecan trees in our yard. Not anymore, every one of them's gone from storms, but that was pecan orchard. Before then, it was citrus. It got blighted, a lot of this was citrus. But, and up the street, they had the pools, the Beaujays, the Benezoos. Right across the street, we had a snowball stand. And Mike Benezoo ran the snowball stand. Mike Benezoo was special needs. He was in his 30s when I was a kid. He played with us all the time. And the only thing we thought special about him was the fact that he was huge, because he was a full-grown big man. And they had that little hill that went down to where the harbor is. And he would hurl us. I don't know if you ever played airplane where you grab a foot and a leg and swing. This is the thing we did when we were kids. But Mike could actually throw you. He could launch you down the hill, and you'd land down there in that soft bottom where the crawfish holes were, and you come back up. And we always had to be home when the lights come on. Everybody just like scattered. So there's and he had that snowball stand. For a nickel, you could get a snowball.
Where was that?
Right across the street from me on Calhoun.
On Calhoun. Okay.
It's Karen Chance had lived there, Mike Maniscalco, right across the street. And I was coming home across the street, and my mom came out and said, "Mike, are you okay?" And Mike was crying. And I was this big. Mike was huge. He's probably 250 pounds. She said, "Did you make Mike cry?" And I'm thinking, no, they did not. And he was crying. And she walked across the street because he couldn't cross the road. And she was tiny. And she looked up at him and says, "Mike, why are you crying?" And his speech wasn't perfect, but we all understood him. Said everybody left. And I remember it was one of the few times when I was a kid I got to stay out till it got dark to play with Mike. Joel, I had to come in and eat.
That's such a good story. I was going to ask you what was a perfect day for you in your childhood? And I think you've kind of answered it, but would you like to add anything to it?
Well, perfect day probably was with all the folks riding around on bikes.
Checking out the Penny Twins sometimes. But that was, we had to get okay to come down there. But go to Front Beach, swim at the community pier, you know, and up until late 60s, you know, it was segregated, you know, and
Looking at it differently.
but
It's
No.
history.
Yeah.
No,
So-
this is what we want.
we were, you know, in ninth grade was the first year, my ninth grade, 69, was actually when we split the schools. And Elizabeth Keys was where the entire ninth grade went, which was my class. It was like they not only segregated all over, but that had been the black school before then, Elizabeth Keys. So we all went there, but we knew a lot of the black kids. We would play at Freedom Field. It was just not that big a deal. Sports, you know, it wasn't. We didn't hang out in it. We didn't go to their house. They didn't come to our house. But sports, we were at Freedom Field. And one day, my dad comes home and he brings me out on the front porch, which was never good. Never a good thing when he said, right when he gets home, he goes, Blake. So we went out on the front porch and he goes, so what'd y'all do today? And I said, well, we went to, you know, rode around, went down to the harbor, through M80s at the Catfish, went down the community pier. And he said, who was down there? And I named, you know, Bill, Eddie, Peter, Ronald, and Joe. And he went, no, who's Joe? And I said, oh, it's a little kid we play up at Freedom Field with. And he went, is he a colored kid? Because that was the proper word then. And I went, yeah, he is. He says, how do you know him? I said, play football with him all the time. And he was down there with us. And he goes, and where were y'all swimming? And I went, in the pier. And he goes, well, you know, most of the colored people don't swim down there. Well, you know, I was probably 8 or 9, maybe 10. And it just wasn't obvious to me. And he'd gotten a call at work. Somebody saw us down there. And I'm sure all the other dads did too. And that they were complaining that, because everybody knew everybody, that I was down there along with Eddie and Bill and all of us playing with some little black kid at the end of the community pier where the whites were supposed to go. And eventually he says, well, you know, Blake, that's frowned upon. And there could be repercussions, which he had explained what repercussions were. And he goes, and you just have to be ready to accept that. And he goes, so, in the future, if Joe May comes down there, what are you going to do? And I went, I'm going to go swimming with him. He went, okay. And that was it. And he never said anything else. And I suspect he made a phone call back and told somebody, you know what, he's probably just need to back off. The thing was, I don't know that Eddie and Bill and all those got the same talk, but it didn't change anything we did. So,
Well, did it change when you went to school, when it was integrated?
Yeah.
Did it change somewhat after that? Or was there still a lot of stigma?
You know, I suspect there was, but not with, that was apparent to me. And it could be just because I'm not smart enough to have figured it out. But I never noticed it. When legally we integrated was mid-60s. And at Tacony, then was up through ninth grade. We had black kids there. The Casey twins, Philip and Filbert Casey, Joe May, Butch Newkirk. So, you know, some people, I'm sure it bothered some people. Most of my friends I played sports with. Most of these guys played sports. So, you know, it was just sort of an easier transition. And I know when we went to Keys, there were complaints. But the biggest complaint was when we walked into Keys, it was horrible. It was Coach Fairley. They put Coach Fairley was our principal. And if you saw, and that was obvious to me, and I was 14 years old. It was obvious that, oh my gosh, because we didn't think Tacony was the greatest thing in the world. But when you saw that, It was pretty
lot
bad.
different.
A lot different. Pretty bad. Very, very basic. And, but yeah, I don't remember any of the hate and discontent. There's always
Yeah.
the blips every now and then, but I don't remember.
Okay. I want to ask you one more question before we move on to some of your high school years.
All right.
What did you want to be when you were real young? Do you remember?
I do. I wanted to be a doctor or a dentist. And it had nothing to do with helping people. It was about the money. And I'm sure growing up poor and not having a lot, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking I could do better. I could do better. I could do better. In fact, I think if I would have gone, and when I went to junior college, that's part of my problem. I was, I was in the top 20. I was an honor student. Even with all getting in trouble, I still managed to do that. So, I could have done the math, because later I did do the math, but I just didn't really, my heart was never in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to talk to you a little bit about high school. Were you just answered that question, but you were a pretty good student. You took it pretty seriously?
No, I had good grades. I was not a good student. I was not a good student. I had, it was always easy for me. Excuse me just a second. It was always easy.
Okay.
I could memorize well. I made good grades. I hung out with smart people and cheated. No, I didn't. But there was always that push by parents. But as long as I was getting straight A's, and for the most part I did. Back then we didn't have advanced classes, but we had advanced math is what they called it, and physics with Mr. Arndt, and I took those. There were only like a dozen of us in there, and Donald was always in there.
Yeah.
And Donald liked those good grades. Me, it was just made life easier. So
Okay. You have a big group of friends that I think y'all still hang out.
Yes.
But back in school, what did y'all do for fun when you were in high school?
Be honest.
So I would say date, but I didn't date a lot. I dated every once in a while. I was thinking when I came in, East Beach, way back in the day, that's where everybody came to park. And the submarine races. I used to tell all my friends, I used to come down and just park even if I was by myself. So people would go, that daggone Blake's down here again.
Wait, what are the submarine races?
Pardon?
What are the submarine races?
Oh, that's
Making
when-
out.
Oh, they call that. I knew parking meant that, but I didn't know
Yeah.
submarine races.
Yeah,
That's
submarine
because you're not
races.
really watching anything.
That's right.
Okay.
And there aren't any submarines.
That's why I got confused. I'm like, what are you talking about? Okay.
But back in the day, we hit the bars, even when we were quite young. And Gabe's was in town. That was a local hangout. It's right there where the daiquiri shop is now.
Oh, okay.
Pickwick. When Red Patalo owned the Pickwick, which I don't know if you know where that's at.
I do, over on Porter, right?
On Porter, and it used to be the only thing there, and it was the big parking lot out there. And it's, people they talk about riding through their town. Ours was the loop. It made it easier because you could ride the loop, Porter to Front Beach to Washington, up Washington to Porter, and you just did the loop. And every once in a while, you turn around so you could see who's following you, And Front Beach then, at least at night, was packed up. Always people stopping, parking, and people from St. Martin, Notre Dame, Sacred Heart, Biloxi schools. That's where everybody met. Pickwick, a lot. It was, and I would pull in there, leave my keys in the car, because it was just
You could do it.
safe.
Yeah.
And then Biloxi, Hugo's, after the games, we always went to Hugo's, had pizza with the French dressing. Then Fiesta was a big one for us. Everybody went to the Fiesta, which is sort of where Treasure Bay is, dancing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, did y'all have school dances, or was that a part of your growing up?
We didn't have, the school dances we did have were typically for prom and for homecoming. And usually it was at the community center. Back when we used to lean against those walls and, you know, hang out and write BP plus BR. Nope. ML. Nope.
On the wall?
Oh, yeah.
Did you have any particular teacher that was more influential than others, that maybe a mentor or somebody that really that you took a liking to and they to you?
I don't know that she pulled me out as special, but she did it for everybody, and that was Ms. Virginia Lee in 4th grade at East Elementary. And she was, if I would have had her later, I would have wanted to be a teacher. She was so good at what she did, but everybody felt like it was all about them. Me and Dave Pepper and Donald Shar, she had a little bookcase in the back, and you had to check books out and read them. And that's where I really started reading a lot. And me, Dave, and Donald would sort of compete with each other to who could read the Hardy Boys, or we were even reading, Nancy Drew, or the Black Stallion, or the Real Life of Kit Carson, and all those. But she read in class. She was very personable, and she was just.
Did she read Miss Minerva to you?
She read Miss Minerva to us.
Okay.
Yeah, sure did. Some of the things that she read then you couldn't read now, but. And then later, I don't know if you remember Miss Hearn, Miss Dye.
Pat Dye?
Yeah, her. And I think that probably she taught me geography, and algebra. And I tell you, she made math for me fun. I ended up working in a field where it was a lot of math. And when she they picked her star teacher of the state, and I saw it. Someone sent me the Ocean Springs record. So I wrote her a note and said, "You probably don't remember me." We were like her first year. She seemed so old then, at 23 years old. But, but we were like our first year. And I wrote her a note and I said, "You probably don't remember me. But my whole life has been about," and I did love that field. My whole life has been, the background is math. And I think if it hadn't have been for you, I don't know that I would have even gone down that path. And she wrote a note back, which I saved, still have. And it said, "Oh my God, of course I remember you. Hated you." No. But
that's a great story.
Yeah,
That's a really.
But Walter, we were on Calhoun, so when he would come in, he would ride his bike up through town, and fell in our ditch one time. And remember my mom going out to try to help him out. That didn't go well. He was not a happy guy that day. And but we would see him up at the park. And the park back then had the swings, which are probably
which park are you
I'm
talking
sorry,
about?
City Park.
Okay.
Uptown. It was only
like the children's park where that is now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that, I don't even know what it's called. For us,
It's a children's park.
yeah.
Like next to Glenn Miller's house?
Yeah. So back then it didn't have the fence. We had the swing. We had the climb and monkey bars with a big loop that you could fall off and kill yourself. They had one of those things that you spin that are probably illegal now.
They still have one of those.
Yeah, but that's, you sort of sit in it. Mm-hmm. This is the one you stood up on in the metal, and you could get you get about 5 guys and Cheryl Miller on there, and you could sling her like way over there, and then there was always that ditch. And I noticed this now. The other day I saw one of a dad up there, and he got all the stuff now way better than it used to be up top. But we always played in the ditch. especially if there was water in it. And that's what kids do. You sort of gravitate down to that. But when it was really a lot of rain, it would fill that bottom up with this much water, all siphoning out in a little spot like about this big. So you had to be really careful that you didn't get too close, because, right there at the foot of the hill before you get to Pershing, if you look off to the right behind Renee and David's house, right there at the very foot on the corner of Pershing and Calhoun, it drops off. Well, that goes to the harbor, and all those areas go right there. And there's a culvert there underneath there. It's a rectangle. Back then it seemed huge, but it's probably this tall and about that wide. We played in there all the time. And they have water pipes, drainage, that run either way. And we would get in those water pipes. It was nothing for us to go down the block and over to Eddie Norris's house, because that was the next road grading. You could see it. I mean, the pipe's this big. And you had to do this. No telling what was in those pipes. But so we went up there one time, and Eddie Norris's mom, Arlene, was raking. And Ronald Howell got up there, and the gratings back then were those handmade, cheap ones, and it was just a bunch of bars. And we crawled back up there, and we could hear something. So we lifted up, and Arlene was like, 10 feet away, and she was raking. So I lifted it up, and I went, Arlene. Arlene. And I left it. She looked around, and she raked again, and Ronald would go, Arlene. And she looked around, and she goes, Eddie, is that you? I'm going to beat your butt when I find you.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah, that was a good one.
But we would get in the Parlin yard, that bottom yard on the left at the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And the water would fill up in there. When it rained a lot, I mean, everything drains to there. And when it would go under that road, it was a torrent. The water was waist deep on us, and it was just shoot you out. Back then it didn't drop so much, but it still dropped a little bit. And we would get into Parlin's and do this and shoot through there out the other side. And you had to be careful, because there were rocks and trees.
It sounds dangerous to me.
Extremely dangerous. Very dangerous.
So we are lucky you're here today.
Yeah. We told my mom. We told my mom that one time, like at Christmas. We were talking. I was telling the boys, because I told them the story, and my mom. I looked over at my mom, and she was just. This is like 30 years later. She was just like, right. She's, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Oh.
Okay, what about some of your favorite businesses downtown that you remember that are no longer here today?
Barnett's, where Chuckleheads is now on the corner. That used to be Barnett, the Barnett brothers. And they were always, all the businesses were nice to people. It's just a local town, and, they'd run you off if you weren't being, but we'd always go by there, fill up our bikes, tires, they used to have a Coke machine out front, and it was the one that you pulled the Cokes out. And now go up there one day, and Buddy Broom is there, and he's got a cup, and he's got a can opener, and he's popping them and drinking them like this. And of all the kids growing up, of course, Buddy's family owned Brooms. You wouldn't think, but that was Buddy. But Kermis Broom, he had a lot of people on IOUs, and occasionally, when they would clear the books, he'd just throw those IOUs away. Mr. Moeller, back when Spud Nut, at the end of the day, if they'd had extra donuts left, and if Kermis had food that was getting ready to go bad, he'd take it out in town, give it away. Mr. Pooley, Mr. and Miss Pooley, Gus and Velma owned the Five and Dime. Employed my oldest sister as a clerk, and my dad built the shelves in the old Ben Franklin for extra money.
Where was that?
Lady May.
Lady May's.
Actually, right next to it used to be Robert Cox's barbershop.
Was never.
I'm not so sure it wasn't in the candy place, but so he would always. I told Bobby Cox this one time. I said, I remember going there for my first haircut. I don't remember it, but that's where I went. But I remember I remember all those haircuts, and he would take a board and put it on the arms of the chair to put you up high. Bobby still got the board, and he would always give us. You get to pick a piece of candy afterwards, but he would take that hot lather that he would, when people got shaved back then. He shaved people. He would put that on our ears and on the back of our neck when we were little kids. Oh, I'm telling you, walk out of there because he put that smell good on you. I'm just waiting for a girl to walk by at 6 years old. And but he would take that razor, straight razor, and he would scrub it, and it was so cool. And he didn't have to do any of that, right? He didn't have to do any of that. He did it because I'm sure he knew that was a big deal for us, and it sort of calmed us down as getting our hair cut. And I think there was a Westbrook that cut hair downtown also, but there weren't a lot. There was where Gabe's ended up being, but all I remember is they used to have a Miller sign you could see in that little window here, and it was all guys.
Where's Gabe's?
Right where the daiquiri shop is, next to Lady May. Right there. And it was all guys. And if a wife ever called to see if Earl was there, whether Earl was sitting across from him, he'd go, "Earl Norris, you in here?" And Earl would go, or no. And, and then I'm trying, at the VFW, I went there a few times. They had all the slot machines in there. And they were all illegal back then, as was all the ones in Biloxi. And there was a lot of gambling going on in Biloxi. Everybody knew they had them. And when they started doing the raids on some of that, Earl ended up with 2 of them at his house. I don't know that they ever cashed out because I put a lot of Coca-Cola nickels in there that I never got anything. I think Eddie just went through and got it later. But,
Does Eddie still have those slot machines?
he's got one of them.
Wow.
And he had it fixed back. Actually, Lisa, his sister, has it now.
Oh, wow.
And our house stuck out in the back. And so our house was here. Eddie's was around here. Can I tell a story on Eddie?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're here and we're getting ready for graduation night. And we got plenty of time. My dad goes, "Blake, need to get ready, got to roll." And I went, "Dad, we got plenty of time." He says, "Well, the Norrises are all dressed down the street." And I look out the back door and Eddie's down there, got his gown. And I do this. And he went, "Oh, no," because see, Eddie wasn't graduating. Eddie had failed one of his classes, hadn't told him, had got the gowns and everything. So I said, "Dad, Eddie didn't graduate." And he goes, "Well, he's got everything on." And he goes, "Somebody needs to tell Earl and Arlene." I said, "It's not going to be Eddie, I can tell you." So finally, Lisa, his sister, was a few years younger. Arlene goes in and said, "Lisa, you got to get up, got to roll. Go to your brother's graduation." And we were graduating that year. We were at the football field. And Lisa says, "I'm not going to sit up in those stands and have them not call your name and Earl and Arlene there with everybody else and you out there in a chair." So he finally went, "Dad, there's been a horrible mix-up. Somewhere somebody messed up my grades and they don't have the information for my graduation. So I won't be able to walk tonight." And of course, Earl got appropriately upset at the school. And later he told him, "Well, as it turned out, I didn't go to school." Eddie learned a lot about Gulf Shores because in high school, that's where we used to go. And for prom, day after prom, everybody went to Gulf Shores.
Oh, my
Eddie
God.
was reconning the place for us, I guess. He's graduated that summer.
Did he? Oh, that's
You know what Fast Eddie's? The oil place?
Oh, yeah.
That was Fast Eddie's.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Not anymore. He
He sold it. He sold it.
But that's Eddie?
That's Eddie.
Oh.
That is Eddie.
Kurt Mosier.
I used to hang around a lot with Dave Ward and Kirk Bozier in high school. We used to ride around and have a few and go by Dunaway's, which is Kahuna's, and get us a Sprite, pour half of it out, and they would give us cherries. Throw in there, we'd fill up the bottle with rum, and we'd hang out and drink, and we would sing all the time. A lot of temps, a lot of Motown, and things like that. And I used to think I sang really well, especially after a bottle of Bacardi and a Sprite. But we all would sing in that car. And I was, not long ago, I was in the shower all alone, sitting there singing. All of a sudden I realized, I went, I sound like crap. Those guys,
The shower will do.
those guys were my friends. But
They probably sounded like crap.
yeah. But Kirk, when he was working as a teacher and coach, he drove school bus also. And he pulls up, Eddie had a big sign that had like 28,000 people served on that big sign out front. Kirk pulls the school bus up one day and honks the horn. And everybody comes out of the bay and he says, "Hey, you got Eddie in there?" Eddie comes out of the back. They're all standing out front along with customers. And he says, 28,000 people, you misspelled screwed, and drove off. So my house wouldn't even be there if we didn't expand Ocean Springs. Because it got moved. It's like Brad Lemon says, "Yeah, Blake, I remember when they built your house. Everybody complained about knocking down all the orchard, and town was getting too far." This is Calhoun Street. Town's moving too far out, moving too fast, too far. And then it was mostly a working town. Later, as my dad said, it became the artsy-fartsy town. But we moved out. I went to East Elementary. Because it was the most east school, which is on Holcomb. Now it's the most west school. So I'm not adverse to growth, but I worked at a nuclear power plant. I couldn't get a pen that I didn't have to justify. And if I said I'm going to need more money than I did last time, I had to show that on a budget. Every year we justified the budget. Every single year we justified every penny we spent going forward because it was the people's money. So, and stockholders, but it's not my money. So I don't understand growth, and it seems to be always the answer is, well, we got to grow because you got to make more money. Well, you may. But you know what? Any good town, any good finance and budget committee could show me every year previous, and you could graph that out. It's not hard. You graph that out and you say, well, here's our growth, and here's what we spent. Well, if our spent's above the line, guess what? You need more money. But if the spent is below the line and our projection still, I don't have to grow. I can just go my merry way. Now, if I'm expecting 5 years from now something to happen, and I need more money, I used to have to project a 10-year budget. Now, I really worked off the 5-year budget, But there were times we would project a 10-year budget on what we knew, which was millions of dollars, way more than this town budget. So I understand budgets. And it's easy. You could do it in a household. You could do it for a club. You better be doing it for a town because they got the information. So I'm not adverse to justified growth. I may not agree with what you're trying to grow. I think every article you read about Ocean Springs, outside of Ocean Springs, is what brings people here, is the quaintness, the trees, the small town vibes. That's what we're making, hanging our hat on. But that's not what we're building. So all these people that say, oh, look at all these lists we're on, guess what? That's going to go away. That will go away because we're going to lose that. And so my answer to people say, oh, you're just old, you just want the way it always was. Well, I would love it that way, but I understand if that estimate goes above what I got coming in, I got to do something different. Now, we could all talk about what that should be. I have friends of mine, because I lived in New Orleans for 35 years, that a lot of their kids and grandkids come to Ocean Springs, and they do call it Little Bird.
Yeah.
They call it. I've
Yeah.
heard them say, "Oh, Mr. Blake, I'd love to come stay with you because," and part of the reason is maybe too much politics is they don't get arrested. It doesn't show up. They move them along. They go in bars. They don't get carded. All the reasons that I used to go to the Fiesta, I used to go to Hugo's. That's what we do. So if you want people to do that, and if you want to hang your hat on being a little bourbon, then we're going the right way. If you want to get rid of the quaintness and have hotels and condos downtown, then you're going the right way. I just think it's the wrong way. And it's not just because I'm old, I don't want change. I just think it's going to catch up with us. If you look right, just go to Bay St. Louis. Bay St. Louis is not doing well. Ask the local residents. I used to go to Gulf Shores. I went to Gulf Shores when you drove down, you hit the beach, there was a Pink Pony pub, and the tallest building was a 2-story on stilts. That was it. And it was all houses on stilts. And if you take that picture and then you show it again, 80s, 90s, and then you show it now, the only thing that's the same is the water and the sand. And I guarantee if you ask those residents that were there, then I knew some of them. They're not going to tell you it's better. They're going to tell you, we've been gone so long we couldn't tell you. And all it is concrete,
Yeah.
and people making money.
You said that all.
I have to make this up. No. When I got divorced, I was fortunate that all the ex-in-laws kept me, most of them. Well, one of them, right after I left, they moved her from outside the other side of New Orleans to Daphne, which is just outside of Fairhope, because that's where her son lives. And nobody was going to see her over there. They put her over here, so it was close to him. It's a beautiful place, very nice place. But I go pick her up about every 6 or 8 weeks, and we go out to plug for the sugar kettle in Daphne. A really nice old house, and it's all Southern cooking food, which she loves. Excuse me. So when I pick her up, this has been going on for the last 5 years. We go to the same place because she likes food, but she's also her memory's starting to go. So when I go pick her up, I call her. If I go, usually it's Wednesday, Thursday, and we try to get in there early. So I call her Sunday, see if she wants to go. I call her Wednesday night, make sure she remembers. I call her before I leave. It's an hour and 15-minute ride. I call her from the parking lot. Then I go in and flirt with the ladies at the counter. And then I go pick her up in her room. And most of the time she goes, "Oh, what a surprise." And we hang out a little bit, and then we take her out. Now, her hearing is really bad. And she's unsteady. She's got a little walker. She's fallen a few times. She's late 90s. But she'll hold my arm. And she holds my arm, I think, a lot of times, not because she needs me to hold her. It's almost like, I got somebody that, because there's not a lot of people visit there. And it's sad. But I always, she can't hear worth a dang. So I always tell the girls up front, they'll go, "So, where y'all going today?" And I'd say, "We've been nude skydiving. We've hung out at the nude beach. Oh, we went to the stripper's ball. She got arrested for climbing on a table when someone threw $1 on the table." But all the stuff, well, she never hears it. So when I walk up, they always go, "So, Ms. Ruby, what did y'all do today?" And she just smiles, and I'll say it, and the whole time she'll pat my arm, and they laugh and laugh, and then she'll go, "What did you tell them?" And I'll tell her loudly. But who was it? The last time we went, they had not the last time, it's right around Christmas. They had a girl young lady helping through her college off time at the front desk. Well, the executive director sits right behind the front desk, and they're very good there about everybody that comes in's got to sign in, everybody that leaves got to sign out, especially if you phone. They're very good security-wise for them. So this young girl was there, and she says, "Who are you picking up?" And I tell her, and she says, "Here's the book," and I'm signing the book, and I go pick her up. We take her out, come back. She makes me sign the book, and she goes, "So, Ms. Ruby, what did y'all do today?" And I went, "Well, we went to the church. She tried out for the choir." She went, "Oh my gosh, that's awesome. How'd you do?" I said, "She was doing great." Until they said we're gonna do this next song a cappella. And I said, "That means without music." She thought it meant without clothes. 5 minutes later, we're out of there. So this little girl turns as red as your dress, and she goes like this. And I hear the executive director say in the back, "That's the one." Because evidently she had warned her about it. And the whole time, Ruby just went.
That's hilarious.
That is such a great story. Okay, my last question to you. You've got 3 grandchildren, 1 on the way.
1 on the way.
Okay. And you've lived a good life, had a great time. You've learned a lot. What would you want to say to those grandchildren? What words of wisdom would you like to impart to them?
To live a full life. To enjoy everything you can without hurting other people. So if it's do what you can do, enjoy the moment. I think a lot of times, I lived in Australia. I've lived in a lot of places, and I look back, and I saw it more when I first came back here. There's a lot of people who live in Ocean Springs, and I love them dearly, that don't do anything but the day-to-day, get up, eat, hang out a little bit. But when I first came back, I was always down here. But I was going through a rough time. But I go to the beach. I'll come back to this house. But there's so much here, and it's a beautiful place, and there are beautiful people here. But I've missed that opportunity. I'm on a Facebook page with all my friends in Australia. We try to do a reunion every few years. But they post a lot that's there. And I'll go, "You know what? I didn't do that. Missed that." And a lot of it, through those teenage, early years, I was more worried about drinking, partying, raising hate and discontent. And that was the moment. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do those moments, but you just stop, take a look, if there's something you really like to do. Donald and I talk about that. We could have been writing certainly those stories down when we were really young. I always wanted to, my dad could play 4 or 5 instruments. I can't play any. I can't sing either, so I can't have anything. But and I always wanted to, love music, but I never learned because I never took the time. Anything worth having is worth doing well, but typically that doesn't come easy. I read through Andrew's stories, and I felt really bad that I never took the time to read them to tell him how much I really appreciated his writing. Mm-hmm. I like to read Donald's. A lot of it is because I know Donald, and I know where he's coming from with them. So I would say enjoy every moment. Don't step on toes. Try not to hurt people along the way. A lot of people say, "Oh, do whatever you want." But as long as it's not infringing on other people's rights. Mm-hmm. To draw it back to downtown, I'm not adverse to people making money. But when you're running people away from Bowen Avenue because you want to make money by playing loud music, that's wrong. When you want to move business further and further out, which is residential areas, and dang well it's going to mess with their lives, then that is wrong. It's just wrong. So
Okay.
That's what I would tell them.
Okay.
Just real quick. We were that working village. And quite honestly, we moved into that. We were the outside people coming in. My dad worked at Keesler. Lots of folks in my neighborhood were Keesler and Ingalls. And interspersed in all that, though, were the locals back then. And then we went from that, and I remember my dad complaining about the artsy-fartsy town. Oh, it's that art. But he loved it. But he complained about it. He's because it was a change. I think it was beneficial for Ocean Springs because it made us stop and sort of appreciate what we had here. Walter, when I was growing up, was just a crazy guy.
Yep.
Peter Anderson was just making a living. I used to play at Donald's place, just past where Donald is now, was where Shadowlawn was. That was his grandmother, Miss Dickey. We used to play there all the time. Used to see the Andersons. We were on their pier. We used to go down and play on their pier and crab. They were fine with that. It's back in the day when it was nothing for. We never locked our door. Hey, kids in the house all the time. It was just a different time, and we transitioned to that, the artsy-fartsy, and I think that was beneficial and good, and it helped actually save a lot that we would have just gone by. I just think the next step we're looking at is not a good step, and it's built on making money. It's just, to me, it's just greed. You can grow without that. The building y'all are in now, Dr. Furr's old building.
Oh, yes.
He used to be our doctor. And that's back when they would do house calls.
Yeah.
And he came to our house. I was probably 4 or 5 years old. And he came in, and Kathy had pneumonia. Came to the house. He gave her a shot. I'm sitting on the couch. And I remember he was sitting in between us. It's like 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. It had to be because the street lights were on. And we were inside. And both of us, one on either side, and he fell asleep. And of course, he'd been working all day. He'd been making house calls. He was exhausted. And my mom said later, she says, "Oh, you could just see he was so tired." And he fell asleep. And my mom said, "Don't wake him." So we're getting ready to eat. He woke up. He ate with us. My mom said, "Dr. Furr, I got a spot for you right there." And I remember because I got to eat in the living room. But he ate with us, went home, and every time I went to see him, never failed. My oldest sister was a nurse and used him as a reference when she went to nursing school. Every time I went to see him, he'd ask how my mom and dad were doing, how Lita was doing.
Aww.
Every single time.
Yeah.
And small town.
Small town. Small town. Kermit's Broom with the IOUs. Yep. I love that story. I love that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.